Every morning, I worked as a waitress to help my elderly grandfather keep his cafe running. My lawyer brother also came by every day in his SUV, but only to mock me. "Enjoy your tips," or "waiting tables suits you," were his favorite lines. But when my grandfather passed away a month ago and his will was read, everyone was shocked. $6 million with a condition. My name's Zoe Bennett. I'm 25 years old. It's 5:12 in the morning in northeast Portland, and the rain is needling the old red awning of Maple Corner Diner. Outside, the neon sign that spells our name hums a tired, flickering tune, casting a warm glow on the wet asphalt. Inside, the flat-top grill hisses as I lay down strips of bacon, a sound I know better than my own heartbeat. I can smell the coffee brewing, rich and dark, a scent that's been part of my life since I was tall enough to see over the counter. I run a soft cloth slick with lemon oil over that counter, the same one my grandfather Walter taught me to buff until you can see your future in it. Right now, all I see is my own exhausted face staring back. My phone, propped against the sugar caddies, lights up. It's the hospital. I swipe to answer, my heart suddenly a cold, hard knot in my chest. A kind, quiet voice, a nurse, tells me that Walter passed in his sleep at 4:08 a.m. The world shrinks to the sound of her voice and the slow, steady drip of coffee filling a pot. My hand freezes over the counter. The lemon oil scent feels too bright, too clean for the moment. I lock my jaw, hang up, and flip pancakes for two early regulars, a pair of construction workers who don't say much but always tip well. My hand is shaking as I pick up a piece of chalk and write on the big board over the grill. Walter's stories. Below it, I write the first one that comes to mind, about how he traded a hot meal for the neon sign back in '73. Just then, a sleek black SUV pulls up to the curb, its headlights cutting through the dawn drizzle. Colin, my older brother, steps out holding a clean, black umbrella that's clearly never had to shelter anyone waiting for a bus. He glides in, his courtroom smile perfectly in place. He glances at the old freezer, which is groaning like a tired old man. "Sell while it's sad," he says, his voice smooth and practical. "It's the smart move." 3 days later, I'm sitting in a stuffy conference room downtown, the kind with no personality and a depressing view of gray rooftops under a matching gray sky. The air smells like old paper and faint, bitter coffee. Colin is beside me, checking his watch, a fancy silver thing that probably cost more than our diner's monthly profit. Mom and Dad are across from us, their faces drawn and tired. They stare at the polished surface of the table, their hands folded in their laps, avoiding my eyes. A lawyer I've never met, with a voice as dry as dust, reads Walter's will. It's short and sharp. To Colin, the house, the family home where we grew up with its big backyard and sunny kitchen, appraised at just over $800,000. My stomach plummets. Then the lawyer turns to me. To Zoe, he leaves Maple Corner Diner. The peeling paint, the worn-out booths, the choir of complaining appliances, and a to-do list as long as my arm. The diner barely breathes, making about $22,000 a month in sales, but with $19,400 in expenses, there's almost nothing left. Just enough to keep the lights on and pay for my $31,000 in student loans. Grief turns into a cold, hard stone in my gut. Colin's watch glints under the fluorescent lights as he leans over and squeezes my shoulder. It's not a comforting gesture, it feels like a boss congratulating an intern for fetching coffee. "You'll be fine for a month," he whispers, his breath smelling of expensive mints. "Then call my client. He's interested in the land." I don't answer. I just stand up, take the set of keys the lawyer holds out, and walk out of that gray room. The keys feel as heavy as anchors in my pocket, but the grief is heavier. I drive straight back to the diner. It's the middle of the afternoon, and the place is empty and quiet. The silence feels wrong. It should be humming with conversation and the clatter of plates. I walk behind the counter and into Walter's tiny office, a space so cluttered with memories and receipts it feels like a hug. I sink into his creaky chair and just breathe for a minute, smelling the familiar scent of pipe tobacco and old books. My eyes land on a sealed white envelope tucked under his battered, heavy-duty stapler. My name is written on the front in his familiar, neat script. Zoe, open when it's just you. With trembling fingers, I tear it open. Inside is a single sheet of paper, a letter from him. It talks about a secret, a $6 million trust. My breath catches in my throat. The money, he wrote, would go entirely to whichever grandchild, me or Colin, keeps Maple Corner Diner open and profitable for 12 straight months. But there were more rules. I'd have to complete a specific renovation list he'd laid out and host a community Founders Day celebration before the 1-year mark. There was a catch, a big one. If I sell or if I have to close the diner for more than 48 hours at a stretch for any reason, the money disappears. It goes to a developer that Colin, he noted, quietly favors. The renovation list is taped to the back of the letter. Repaint the dining room, restore the neon sign, fix the ripped seams in the booths, replace the failing freezer, refresh the restrooms, restain the floor, and update all the safety lights. It's a mountain of work. I grab a roll of receipt paper, flip it over, and copy down every single condition. Then I tape it to the wall, a battle plan. I find a whiteboard and write the renovation list in big, black marker. Next to it, I tape a sheet of paper and draw 365 little squares, a countdown calendar. Walter's last words on the letter ring in my head. Keep receipts, keep stories, keep faith, he wrote. You already have everything you need. A fire starts in my chest, a hot flicker of something that isn't grief, it's purpose. I pull out my phone, my fingers flying across the screen. I text Marco Diaz, our night cook who can make magic with sauces and is trying to outrun a shadowy past. I found a way through, need you. A reply comes back instantly, a flame emoji and a clock. Next, I message Ruby Carter, the 17-year-old dishwasher who works harder than anyone I know to help her mom. Can you come in early tomorrow? Big meeting. She replies, I'll bring extra gloves. I text Anita Patel, a retired bookkeeper from 2 blocks over who always told Walter his shoebox accounting gave her a headache. We just call her Mrs. Patel. I have a proposition for you and about 100 shoeboxes. She answers, bring every receipt you can find. Finally, I message Gus Whitaker, a Vietnam vet and handyman who can fix anything with duct tape, a prayer, and 30 years of know-how. Gus, the diner needs you. His text is simple, I'll check the heater by dawn. I find the card for a probate attorney a friend recommended, a woman named Dana Pike. Her voice on the phone is calm and measured. She agrees to meet me tomorrow. Document everything, she advises before hanging up. Everything. My last message is to Colin, I'm keeping it open. His reply comes in less than a minute. You won't last a month. I ignore the sting of his words, grab a step stool and a soft cloth, and head outside into the rain. I drag the stool under the flickering neon sign, and just like Walter showed me, I begin to wipe down the glass tubes, gently, carefully. When I'm done, I flip the switch inside. The sign fights for a second, buzzing and stuttering, then it holds, glowing a steady, defiant red. So do I. I go back inside, pick up the chalk, and write a new line on the board. Walter's promise, we keep the door swinging and the coffee hot. The next few days are a blur of adrenaline and coffee. Gus Whitaker manages to find a decent used freezer from a restaurant that went under. It's not pretty, full of dings and scratches, but he gets it for less than half the price of a new one. We spend an entire afternoon wrestling it into place, and when I plug it in and it hums to life without that familiar death rattle of the old one, I feel a surge of victory. I call a local place, Sparrow Glen Farm, and arrange for them to deliver our eggs and berries. The first time I crack one of their eggs onto the grill, the yolk is so bright it's almost orange. The pancakes suddenly taste like a summer morning ought to taste. We launch a new Walter's special on the chalkboard, a short stack of pancakes, 2 strips of bacon, and a story about my grandfather printed on a little card. I buy a thick, sturdy logbook and start documenting everything, just like Dana Pike said. I take time-stamped photos of every delivery that comes in. I log temperature readings for the coolers every 4 hours. I staple in receipts for every repair, no matter how small. Our little team finds its rhythm. We even get an early win when Mrs. Alvarez, a nurse who works nights and is one of our regulars, posts a photo of her pancake stack on her social media page with the caption, "The heart of the neighborhood is still beating." The hiss of the grill at 6 in the morning becomes my music. The sharp, clean scent of lemon oil on the counter tells me we're starting the day clean and proud. We can't afford to fix the ripped booth seams yet, so Ruby Carter finds some colorful stitched throws at a thrift store and we cover the worn benches. It's a temporary fix, but it makes the place feel warmer. For now, the door swings steady, the coffee stays hot, and the clock keeps ticking. Then, on a Monday night, it starts. A string of one-star reviews appears online, all within an hour. "Got food poisoning here," one says. "Saw a roach scurry under the booth," claims another. "The new owner seems unstable and was yelling at the staff." The usernames are all generic, things like FoodieGuy82 and Portland Eats, all new accounts with no other reviews. They use the same phrases, the same slightly off grammar. It smells like a setup. The next morning, Colin's SUV idles at the curb again. He doesn't even get out, just rolls down his window and shouts across the sidewalk. "Should have sold to someone who knows how to run a business, Zoe." On Saturday, our big bacon delivery just gets lost. The supplier, a company Colin once recommended, claims there was a mix-up with the address. We run out by 9:30, right in the middle of the weekend rush. I have to apologize to every single table, offering free coffee and extra berries. Most people are understanding, but a few customers get angry and storm out, leaving a trail of frustration in their wake. I watch them go, my stomach twisting. That night, the register tally is down. The little envelope I'd started for the renovation fund is thinner. I print out every fake review and tape them into my logbook under a new tab I label Smear Campaign. I don't sink to their level. I reply to each one publicly with simple facts. "We have no record of your visit, but we take this very seriously. Our kitchen is open for viewing and we welcome you to come back so we can make it right." It's a quiet refusal to be bullied. My first move is to switch our meat supplier. I call a company called Rose City Foods, a bigger, more reliable operation. They promise to have a delivery to us by Tuesday. But their truck gets stuck in traffic and the bacon arrives late, right after the main lunch rush has died down. The timing is a mess. It throws off our whole rhythm and we waste product we can't afford to lose. Frustrated, I decide to be honest with our regulars. I post a short update on our social media page. "We're shifting some of our suppliers to make sure we can always serve you the best. Please bear with us as we iron out the kinks. Thank you for your patience." The post gets a lot of supportive shares from people in the neighborhood, but it also attracts a swarm of trolls. The comments fill up with things like "just shut it down already" and "another failing hipster joint." It feels like trying to swim against a current of mud, then a little light. A local food blogger, a woman named Tess Yamada, sends me a direct message. "I hear there's some drama," she writes. "I'll come by and try the new pancake stack. No fuss, just taste." She comes in on a quiet Wednesday, sits at the counter, and orders the Walters special. I serve her myself, my hands shaking a little as I set down the plate. She eats slowly, takes a few pictures with her phone, pays her bill, and leaves a generous tip. That evening, her review goes up. "It's honest food in an honest place," she wrote. "And the owner's hands shake because she's trying to carry too much on her own. Go visit, tip well." Our online rating inches back up, but the smear campaign still floats there, right on top like a layer of grease in a pot of soup. Behind the counter, while we're cleaning up, I look at Ruby. "Facts first," I tell her, more for myself than for her. "Emotions later." She just nods and scrubs a frying pan a little faster. I walk over to the calendar on the wall and cross off another day with a strip of red tape. Day 23, the pressure keeps building. A certified letter arrives in the mail. A surprise health inspection has been scheduled for the middle of next week. Tucked inside is a copy of the anonymous complaint that triggered it. The words are familiar, echoing the fake online reviews. The timing couldn't be worse. The old water heater in the basement has started making a low, growling sound like a sick animal. Gus comes by to look at it, his face grim. "It's not long for this world, Zoe," he says, wiping grease from his hands. "You need to start saving for a new one." There's no money for a new one. I make a hard choice and push off my student loan payment for the month, diverting that cash into the repairs envelope. It's a private failure I have to swallow whole, a secret weight on top of everything else. Marco Diaz, seeing the stress on my face, offers to cover an extra night shift, but the tired lines around his eyes tell me he shouldn't. He needs the rest as much as I do. I can't let him burn out. I tape a new list to the walk-in cooler, tiny fixes before inspection, new soap dispenser in the men's room, regrout the tile behind the sink, replace the frayed mop sink hose. Little things, manageable things. My phone buzzes with a text from Dana. "Keep your logbook visible on the counter when the inspector arrives. Be polite, don't speculate about who filed the complaint." Her advice is always so clear, so calm, it helps. But as I'm wiping down the counter that night, the 48-hour closure rule from Walter's letter feels like a wolf pacing just at the edge of the light, waiting for one thing to go wrong. I take a deep breath, trying to match its rhythm to the steady, pulsing hum of the neon sign, and I keep flipping pancakes. Mrs. Patel arrives on a Tuesday morning with a stack of binders, a box of plastic dividers, and a mechanical pencil she sharpens with a click that sounds like a gavel. She spreads out on a corner booth and we get to work, sorting through the shoeboxes overflowing with faded receipts. She doesn't judge the chaos, she just organizes it. Within a few hours, she's built a simple weekly money map for me on a yellow legal pad, a column for food costs, one for staff pay, supplies, and repairs. At the end, she adds a new category she calls the Rain and Neon Fund. "For emergencies," she says, tapping it with her pencil. "Every business in Portland needs one." Inspired by her order, we create a new system. We start a detailed checklist for daily cleaning, going beyond the basics to include wiping down the baseboards, cleaning out the floor drains, and giving every door handle a nightly bleach pass. Ruby Carter, the dishwasher, draws up a colorful wall chart, assigning tasks and letting everyone initial them when they're done. She takes ownership of that dish pit like a captain on her ship, and it starts to gleam. We make the renovation list public, turning it into a big poster we hang by the door. Customers can see our progress. We tape up a few paint swatches for the dining room walls, and the regulars start a friendly debate, finally voting for a warm cream color with a hint of honey. Gus orders a basic security camera kit online. "Nothing fancy," he says as he installs them. "One for the front door, one for the alley, one on the register. They just record." I hang a small, friendly-looking sign beneath each one. "Smile, you're part of our story." It's meant to be welcoming, but it's also a quiet reminder to myself to be careful. The health inspector, a man named Mr. Ramos, arrives on Wednesday with a clipboard and kind eyes that don't miss a single detail. He walks in, nods a polite hello, and gets straight to work. He checks the temperatures on the fridges and freezer. I immediately hand him our daily logbook, open to that morning's page with photos and time-stamped readings. He raises an eyebrow, impressed. He finds a few minor dings, a loose floor tile in the corner of the restroom, a soap dispenser that's running low, a small crack on one of the plastic cutting boards, nothing major. We fix the soap dispenser on the spot, and I promise to replace the cutting board by the end of the day. He makes a note for a follow-up, but assures me there's no reason to shut us down. Then he gets to the part from the anonymous complaint about rodents in the alley. We walk out back together. Mr. Ramos looks around the clean, swept concrete. There's nothing there but a stray autumn leaf and a piece of old gum stuck to the pavement. I keep my voice perfectly level. "Please tell me exactly what I need to do to improve," I ask, and I write down every single word he says. As he's getting into his car, I notice someone across the street quickly snap a photo of his vehicle before hurrying away. A few hours later, the photo is online with the caption, "Inspectors circling Maple Corner. What are they hiding?" I print a copy of his inspection report, a clean pass, pending the minor fixes, and tape it right next to the front door for everyone to see. The victory is short-lived. On Friday morning at 5:30, I turn on the hot water tap at the big dish sink and get a lukewarm sigh, then a trickle of cold. A chilling silence comes from the basement. The water heater is dead. I call Gus, my voice tight with panic. He's there in 20 minutes, flashlight in hand. He opens the access panel, tinkers for a bit, and lets out a low mutter. "I can buy you some time," he says, "but I can't perform miracles. This thing is shot." He manages to rig a safe, temporary workaround, a bypass that gives us just enough hot water to meet the temperature requirements for hand washing and sanitizing dishes. It's a lifeline, but a fragile one. I immediately call Nate, a plumber Gus recommends. The earliest he can come to install a whole new unit is Monday at 7 in the morning, right before we open. The weekend stretches ahead of me, a tightrope walk over a 48-hour canyon. I call Mr. Ramos, the inspector, and explain the situation. He actually comes back, inspects Gus's temporary fix, and gives it a reluctant nod of approval. "Just don't let it die again over the weekend," he warns. I post a maintenance notice on the cooler and set a timer on my phone to check the water temperature every single hour. We boil huge stock pots of water on the stove as a backup, just in case. Ruby hustles like a sprinter, proud that we're getting it right, that we're not cutting corners even under pressure. The logbook gets a new tab: heater dates, photos, fixes, plan. Within hours of the inspector's second visit, Colin posts a new photo online. It's a shot of Mr. Ramos's car parked out front next to a blurry picture of the open panel on our dying water heater. His caption is dripping with fake concern: "When love and good intentions can't fix what time breaks." Sad to see the old place falling apart. It works. A few of our weekend regulars don't show up. The dining room feels emptier, the silence between orders louder without their familiar laughter. The financial hit is small, but we don't have any cushion for small hits. I meet with Dana Pike at a corner table after the Sunday lunch rush. She sips her black coffee and looks at my growing binder of evidence. "Don't chase his noise, Zoe," she says, her voice firm. "Let him post, you just build your case." She makes me a simple list, screenshots of every post, receipts for every repair, dates, times, names. Simple, boring, bulletproof, she calls it. That night, exhausted, I'm looking over Walter's original renovation list again when I see a line I'd almost forgotten. Founders Day before month 10, invite the neighborhood and the trustee. The trustee, Sylvia Reed, the woman who holds the key to the $6 million. A new kind of fear, cold and sharp, cuts through my fatigue. We need to set a date. I pick a Saturday 9 months from now, giving us a little buffer for the final review period. I circle it in red on the wall calendar. It feels like a finish line and a guillotine all at once. The renovation list suddenly has teeth. The neon signs transformer is buzzing ominously, and the walls are still a dingy beige. The clock keeps eating days, and I keep feeding it work. A few days later, Ruby is on her hands and knees, scrubbing a year's worth of grease from the side of Walter's dented red toolbox that he kept under the counter. As she pushes it back, she feels a strange sliding motion, a false bottom. She calls my name, her voice a hushed whisper. I kneel beside her and pull out a thin manila folder that was hidden inside. My hands are shaking as I open it. Inside, in Walter's tidy, careful handwriting, is a ledger entry: loan $14,000 to Colin, not repaid. Stapled behind it are photocopies of text messages between my brother and a man I don't know, Grant Ellison. The messages are crystal clear. Grant Ellison, a condo developer, is promising Colin $120,000 if the diner sale closes. They call it a finder's fee for smooth sailing. Tucked in with the messages is a hand-drawn sketch on a napkin. It shows a sleek 6-story glass building with the words Maple Corner Lofts written above it. It's a sketch of our corner, but with our little diner erased. In the margin, in Walter's hand, is a single, heartbreaking note. He forgets who fed him. I feel the air leave my lungs, a burning sensation spreading through my chest. I don't cry, I just get up, walk to the little copier in the office, and start making copies. One set goes into an envelope for Dana. Another goes into a shoebox under my bed at my apartment. The originals go into a safe deposit box at the bank the next morning. The proof binder suddenly has real weight. I meet Colin in the driveway of the house he won, the house that should have been ours together. A light drizzle is falling, making his expensive suit look cheap and shiny. I don't waste time with greetings. I hold up the copies of the ledger and the text messages. He actually chuckles, a low, dismissive sound. "Grandpa was getting old," he says, shaking his head. "He misunderstood everything." I've already pressed record on my phone in my pocket. He keeps talking, admitting he was just trying to get Walter out of a money pit, trying to help him cash out. His words are a string of self-serving lies, but it's an admission all the same. I look him straight in the eye. "You're banned from my diner," I say, my voice as flat and cold as the concrete under our feet. "Unless you're there to eat a meal and pay for it like everyone else, you are not welcome." He calls me ungrateful. I call him a liar. The conversation is over. Driving back, I make a call and officially break our contract with the old meat supplier, his friend's company. The next morning, I sign a fresh contract with the regional manager from Rose City Foods. Breaking the old contract costs me. I lose the friendly discount we used to get. It's another financial hit, but the relief of cutting that tie tastes better than any discount. It tastes like strong black coffee. My whole approach shifts. I'm no longer just trying to survive, I'm building a case. Gus helps me mount the security cameras we bought, one pointed at the front door, one covering the register, and a third watching the back alley. We put up clear, simple signs, recording for safety. Every night before I go home, I back up the day's footage to a small portable drive that I label with the date. A second copy of the drive goes home with Mrs. Patel to keep with the financial binders. That binder is growing thicker by the day. It's filled with screen grabs of the troll accounts, signed delivery slips from our new suppliers, the clean health inspection notes, and a simple index I update daily. It's becoming a fortress of facts. I sit down and write a short, calm email to Sylvia Reed, the trustee. I introduce myself, inform her that renovations are underway, that the diner remains open and profitable, and I formally invite her to our Founders' Day celebration on the date we've set. I don't mention Colin or the sabotage, I just report progress. Dana reviews my notes and the binder once a month. She takes a red pen and underlines the things that a judge or a review board would understand in plain English. No emotion, just evidence. I start a new folder on my laptop named Day 365. It's where I start drafting my speech for that day. It's not about defense anymore, it's about a public reckoning. The ticking clock gets louder. Sylvia Reed replies to my email. Her response is brief and professional. "I will attend Founders' Day and the final review meeting. Continue reporting progress as planned." Her words, as neutral as they are, make the whole thing feel terrifyingly real. I walk over to the wall calendar and with a big red marker I write day 84 over today's date. 84 days until Founders' Day. It feels like a lifetime and no time at all. The used freezer, our first small victory, starts making that rattling sound again. Gus listens to it, his head cocked. He thinks it'll last, but he tells me I need to have a plan B ready just in case. I bite the bullet and order the expensive custom parts needed to fix the neon sign from Lyle, a local sign tech who knew Walter for 30 years. He promises to do the work at dawn the week they arrive to minimize disruption. Payroll week arrives and it tightens its icy grip around my chest. To make sure Ruby and Marco get their full, steady paychecks, I cut my own take-home pay to almost nothing. I'm living on leftover soup and coffee. I put a new, simple sign by the register. "Thank you for carrying this place with us." The regulars seem to understand. They tip a little more, they linger a little longer. At dusk, the diner glows with a warm, inviting light. I stand across the street sometimes just looking at it and I imagine it going dark. The thought makes me physically sick. There's no turning back. Founders' Day won't just be a party, it will be the trial Colin never saw coming. I'm sorting through one of Walter's old shoeboxes of paperwork late one night when I find it. Scrawled in the margins of a supplier invoice in his familiar handwriting are the words, "No condos. Keep breakfast where people can afford it." And everything clicks into place. It was never about me failing. It was never about whether I was a good enough waitress or a smart enough business owner. Colin isn't attacking me. He's clearing a path. He needs the diner to fail so he can sell the land to Grant Ellison and get his finder's fee. The realization flips a switch in my head. My plan shifts from quiet survival to a full-blown public revival. I'm not going to hide and weather the storm anymore. I'm going to shine a spotlight on the whole rotten deal and show everyone what's been happening in the dark. I start outlining the Founders Day event. It won't be fancy or expensive. We'll turn our little parking lot into a block party. Neighbors can bring their own chairs. I'll hire a trio of kids from the local high school's jazz band to play for a small fee. We'll serve simple hotcakes and coffee on the house. And on the chalkboard, we'll feature stories from the whole neighborhood. In my notebook, I list the order for my presentation. First, the proof of renovations. Second, the simple sales trend showing we're in the black. Third, a thank you to the community that helped us. And fourth, the final, undeniable proof of sabotage. I script my speech in simple, first-person language. No shouting, no legal terms, just the plain, hard facts. On the wall calendar, I draw a star on the midpoint day of our one-year countdown. From here on out, there are no more half steps. The next day, I make the plan irreversible. I get a big piece of poster board and in bright red letters announce the date and time for our Founders Day street party. I hang it in the front window. I post it on our social media page and tag Sylvia Reed, thanking her in advance for attending. Ruby, who has a real talent for design, creates a simple, cheerful flyer at her school's computer lab, and we print a stack of them to leave on the counter. I take a deep breath and use the diner's debit card to place a non-refundable deposit on rental tents and chairs, knowing full well that Portland's storm season might just laugh in my face. I call Lyle, the sign tech, and book him for the neon repair the week before the party. "Rain or shine," he says, his voice gravelly, "I'll be on that ladder at dawn." I call the band director at the high school. He's thrilled. 3 of his best students, a keyboard player, a saxophonist, and a kid with a drum pad, say yes for a small stipend and all the pancakes they can eat. I send a message to Tess Yamada, the food blogger, inviting her to come and record the event. "If you promise to show what happens, no matter what it is." She agrees. By the end of the day, I've put up a sign-up sheet by the door for the party. People start adding their names: potluck pies, folding chairs, 2 power strips, 3 extension cords. For the first time in months, I feel the ground tilting toward me instead of away. Making these moves comes at a cost, a personal one. To cover the deposit for the band and a spare propane tank for the outdoor grill, I take my grandmother's gold bracelet, the one Walter gave her for their 25th anniversary, to a pawn shop. The man behind the counter gives me a fraction of what it's worth, but it's enough. The weight of it missing from my wrist is a constant, dull ache. A close friend is getting married the same weekend as the party. I have to call and tell her I can't make it. She says she understands, but the phone call ends with a long, hollow silence. Mom calls and asks me to come to Sunday dinner. I tell her I can't, not as long as Colin is there. She sighs and hangs up slowly, and the distance between us feels like a canyon. My hands are a mess, cracked and raw from the constant dishwashing and cleaning chemicals. One afternoon, Ruby quietly leaves a tube of expensive hand cream she bought with her tip money on the counter for me. I'm so overwhelmed I have to go into the walk-in cooler to cry where no one can see me. I stop buying coffee on my way in and start drinking the batch brew we serve, bitter and honest. My old work boots finally give out, the sole flapping loose. I try to patch them with duct tape. Gus sees them, laughs a gentle, rumbling laugh, and comes back the next morning with a nearly new pair of sturdy boots from his garage that fit perfectly. The diner becomes my entire world, my bed, my church, my battleground. I accept the blisters. Over the grill, I tape up a new mantra written on a strip of receipt paper: keep the fire, keep the proof. My goal has changed. It's no longer just about not drowning. The new goal is to thrive, to prove what we've built, and to protect this diner by exposing the sabotage in broad daylight. It's about fighting back, not just holding on. I start a Walter's wall on a big corkboard and invite customers to pin up little notes about a time my grandfather helped them or made them laugh. It fills up in a matter of days with stories of borrowed tools, free meals, and fatherly advice. We start a new program called Pancakes for Progress, where 50 cents from every short stack sold goes into a scholarship fund in his name. The jar next to the register starts filling up with dollar bills. I reach out to our new suppliers at Sparrow Glen Farm and ask for a bulk discount on eggs in exchange for prominent advertising on our menu. They say yes because, as the owner told me, you told the truth when things got tough. Mrs. Patel starts a weekly open book session for 10 minutes every Friday afternoon. Any neighbor can come to the register and ask where the money is going, and she answers every question clearly and patiently. I tell Ruby to keep calling me out if she ever sees me cutting a corner on safety or cleanliness, and she takes the responsibility seriously, pointing out a wobbly shelf I'd overlooked. The plan is no longer just a checklist on the wall, it has become the backbone of this place, and of me. The day the retaliation really ramped up, it felt like a weather front rolling in, no warning, just a sudden pressure that made everything ache. First, a yellow notice stuck to the front door, permit null. It looked official enough to scare anyone who didn't know how to spot a fake. I took a photo and texted it to Dana. Her reply was immediate: fake, photograph everything. Keep going. I printed the notice and slipped it into the binder under a new tab: fakes and fraud. The next blow was the bacon delivery canceling again. The driver didn't want to talk on the phone. He kept apologizing like someone who's been told not to ask why. Marco muttered something about someone above me, and I felt that old anger, the one that burns steady and sour. That afternoon, the phone started with prank calls, orders for 50 sandwiches, calls repeated, then silence. We made a run of them anyway and ended up donating the food to the trio of kids practicing their set in the back. It swallowed hours and bacon and, honestly, patience. A noise complaint landed for a 6 a.m. delivery. 2 officers came by, kind and polite, looked at our logs and nodded like they wanted to believe us. They told me to keep the paperwork handy. I put the officers' business cards in the binder. Ruby drew a little cartoon of a wolf with a clock in its mouth and taped it above the prep table, our 48-hour wolf. I bought an extra broom that night because when things escalate, small items break easier, and I wanted one less thing that could snap. The tip jar looked lighter than the week before. The neon hummed on, steady and stubborn, like it was trying to reassure me that some lights never go out. The next week, a few of the places I'd thought of as safe started to wobble. Marco got a message from his parole officer and had to shift his schedule. He couldn't cover the late nights he'd promised. He looked smaller standing there by the counter, running his thumb along the edge where the enamel had chipped. I picked up the extra hours and fatigue made me clumsy. I spilled a pot of soup and dribbled it across the floor, then cursed under my breath as we had to throw away the ruined batch. Little stuff that used to be annoying felt like a leak now. Walter's favorite corner booth split open more. I stapled the seam with fabric tape, functional but ugly, and every time a regular slid into that booth I hated that makeshift repair. Mr. Linden, who used to sit alone and leave generous tips when his wife worked nights, stopped coming. His empty seat at the counter felt like a missing pulse. A crate of tomatoes arrived cracked and bruised from a delivery mishap, and we turned them into soup at a loss, sold at a discount so they wouldn't go to waste. The mop bucket wrung out gray water and I wrung out doubt with it, twisting the handle until my palms burned. Gus reminded me in his gravel voice, "You can't do all the work yourself, Zoe. Empower the smart people." So I made Ruby in charge of the closing checklist. She took to it like she'd been waiting for that responsibility, initialing each task with a proud little flourish. When she announced the floor was dry and the lights off, I felt a tiny victory, like a stitch sewn through the hole in a sweater. Then someone with more reach found a way to bite us where everyone would notice. A neighborhood blog posted a piece titled, "Is Maple Corner Fading?" The headline had no venom, but the picture they chose showed our neon with a sputter and a hummingbird in mid-flight, beautiful and mean. Tess Yamada popped into the comments with her review link and tried to steer readers back to taste and truth, but trolls swarmed the thread and drowned her out for a while. I decided to fight the fear with service. We hosted a free coffee morning for service workers, nurses, bus drivers, day laborers, all the people who keep the city moving. They came through like a river, hats pulled low, boots muddy, warm hands around styrofoam cups. We emptied the tip jar into kindness that morning and left the till lighter, but the room felt fuller than it had in weeks. Mrs. Patel sat by the register, frowning at the numbers and then patting my hand like it mattered more that the room smelled like cinnamon than that the ledger showed a small loss. We put out a suggestions jar and people wrote small, honest things: add pie night, please keep the jukebox, Walter's stories are my Sunday. Dana texted me, public attention is noise. Proof beats posts. I slept 20 minutes on a folded apron in the office that night and dreamed of neon, its steady red line a heartbeat I was learning to follow. The constraints tightened like a noose made of small, sensible things. Nate, the plumber, called to say a main break across town pushed his earliest slot back 12 hours. Our heater fix would now land Monday at 7 a.m. instead of dawn. I felt the wolf growl at the edge of the map: 48 hours and the clock would swallow our chance at the trust. We sketched contingency plans on a scrap of receipt paper. Gus would bring a generator, we'd stock extra pots of boiled water and keep them warming on the back burner, and we'd have a checklist for a no hot water emergency: how to boil for hand washing, how to stagger dishwashing to keep temps safe, how to mark which cups had been sanitized. Sylvia Reed emailed a short reminder of the trust conditions: no closure beyond 48 hours. Her words were polite and precise, and they weighed heavier than the same number scrawled on our wall. I added a third camera to the alley and put up another small sign at the back door: neighborhood cameras in use. The permit office sent a note that one complaint had been filed against our block party application. It was thin on reason but heavy on consequence. A single complaint could slow the permit process to a halt. I tightened the plan, moved the party onto our lot and our sidewalk if the street closure failed. I ordered 2 rolls of duct tape and a pack of zip ties, practical armor for the last-minute fixes we'd need. The piles of receipts and copies in Mrs. Patel's binder felt less like paper and more like stones I could stack to build a dam. Then, in the deepest quiet of the night, the alley camera gave us the break we'd been praying for. I told Gus to make sure the 3 cameras were angled so nothing in the yard could be missed, and he'd grumbled about his neck being sore from climbing ladders, but he'd done it. At 2:14 a.m., the feed shows a figure in a dark hoodie slipping through the alley, looking both ways like someone who knows the rules of a bad neighborhood. He sets a little bag down by the back door, snaps a photo of the mess inside, and scatters something on the ground like someone planting a clue. Ruby, who can hear a pin drop when she's been awake at midnight sorting silverware, heard a rustle when she took out a stack of cardboard. She ducked back just in time and whispered, "Zoe, come." We watched the footage in slow motion, my coffee gone cold in my hands. The man jogs off, hood up, shoulders hunched. We opened the bag with nitrile gloves. Inside was a printed photo labeled evidence showing a staged rodent sign and a man's pellet with a pet store sticker still clinging to it. I printed still frames, circled the time stamps, and put the physical items in a box marked and dated. I called Dana at 2:42 a.m., voice low. "Do not confront," she said without hesitation. "We preserve. We don't escalate." I locked the back door, triple-checked every bolt, and copied the video onto 3 separate drives, one for the binder, one to go to a safe deposit, and one that Mrs. Patel would keep at her house. For the first time in months, the wolf at the edge of the light looked like it might have paws in evidence someone could show. Mrs. Patel sat at the table like she always did, pencil behind her ear, glasses low on her nose, and she began to cross-check things without drama. She compared the troll post's timestamps to Liam's social media check-ins, and one by one the overlaps showed up like stitches. The more she turned pages, the clearer it got. The posts, the delivery no-shows, the weird inspector photo uploads, they lined up with times when Liam had been active online. Gus leaned over my shoulder and froze on a frame of a dark SUV in the alley 2 nights earlier. He zoomed in and then slowly said a name I did not want to hear. The license matched the one registered to Grant Ellison. I felt my mouth go dry. Tess, who'd been quietly holding my breath with us, nodded and said she'd come to Founders Day to film whatever happened and promised to post the uncut footage. That promise felt like a warm blanket. We printed a simple timeline, dates, times, short notes, and photos. It fit on one clean sheet: inspection date, fake notice, delivery cancellations, alley footage. Ruby's friend from her high school news club offered a projector and a promise: just don't drop it. Dana, methodical as ever, prepared plain language handouts so anyone could read the story without a lawyer explaining it. No complicated words, just the facts laid out clear: what happened, when, and who was in the pictures. I labeled one binder for Sylvia and another for public and made a copy of everything for Tess. Every piece of evidence got a twin copy and a home, one in Mrs. Patel's pot of binders, one in the safe deposit box, one in my apartment drawer. It felt like building 2 houses, one for truth, one for safety. The threads were fusing into something more than suspicion. I could see the pattern now, like a map that made sense when you stopped squinting. It didn't fix the small, ugly pains, Marco's schedule shifts, the extra money spent on quick fixes, but it gave me traction. For the first time since Walter's funeral, I felt less like I was paddling alone against a tide and more like I had maybe, finally, a plan that would hold. The last safe options began to vanish in a week that felt thinner than air. Mid-lunch one Tuesday, the old fridge gave up with a soft, horrifying sigh and then silence. Food that should have stayed cold went into ice chests and smaller batches, and I watched my margins bleed a little. The permit office flagged a complaint about our block party application. Someone had formally said it was a safety and noise issue. The review stalled. A neighbor's garage where we'd stacked folding tables flooded during a sudden storm and the tables warped. The kids' keyboard power cord shorted out during a practice. Suddenly we needed battery amps and a quick, ugly solution. The community page filled with arguments. Half the people wanted a celebration, half said we should be careful. I kept my mouth closed online. I refused to match volume with venom, but some folks took my silence for guilt. Marco, wound thin with the extra hours and pressure, snapped at a customer who demanded free food because they heard the place was going under. He apologized profusely, covered the plate, added hot sauce, and the customer left with a shrug and a smaller tip. Each little loss felt like a tooth chipped out of something I wanted whole. There was no one safe corner left to hide in. Everything that had been a cushion had been picked at or pulled away. We had to move the party, and everything we were saving for had to be done with no margin for error. With every cracked board and canceled delivery, the high-risk plan hardened into our only real option. I decided to shift the celebration a tiny bit, a few feet from the street to our lot and the sidewalk, using neighbor storefronts for overflow. It meant no official street closure, less liability, and a chance we could still pull off the crowd we needed without the permit hanging over us. Gus went down to the church and borrowed barricades for crowd flow and safety, and we filled sandbags to anchor them. I scheduled the reveal for noon so it would be front and center, proof first, feelings second. If people came for pancakes, they'd stay for the facts. I asked Sylvia to speak before my reveal. She agreed to stand and listen, short and neutral, which was all I wanted. No theatrical support, just a witness. We printed 200 copies of a 2-page summary, the ledger entry, the messages, the alley photos, and a timeline people could carry home. I ordered the Walters apron napkins, white, sturdy cloth with his initials stamped in blue, and told Ruby to fold them like little flags. Tess lined up 2 cameras and a small microphone for me. She showed me the tripod and the tiny mic, and when I tested the sound, I could hear my breath echo in my ears. It was a loud little thing, the sound of my own heart I'd carried around for months. I made a list of every human thing that could go wrong and a backup for each. Lyle, the sign tech, promised the neon work the week before. The high school trio had battery amps on standby. Mrs. Patel promised to bring extra copies of the folder and to stand at the front door and hand them out. I slept 2 hours, then woke to the neon's stubborn glow and a rain that sounded less like a threat and more like applause. The night before, everything felt like a test I hadn't studied for. A windstorm rolled through and the neon that had been our stubborn heartbeat began to sputter. It hummed, coughed, and then went out, leaving a bruise-shaped shadow across the front window. The tent company called and said they were canceling because of gusts. The deposit vanished with their voice. I stood there, umbrella useless, and felt the cold seam up my back. Colin emailed Sylvia, and for some brutal reason he CC'd Mom and Dad. "I'm worried about Zoe's stability and public safety," he wrote, polite and small. Mom called and her voice cracked in that way that lets you hear she's trying to be neutral. "Don't make a scene, Zoe, your brother has a career." The line went quiet between us and I felt the distance like a wet wind. I sat on the dry storage floor clutching Walter's old work shirt. It smelled like soap and grill and every morning I'd ever had with him. The wall of notes, replies from neighbors, recipes, receipts made a noise in my head like a crowd humming. For a stupid, honest second, I pictured myself handing Colin the keys and sleeping for a year. The countdown wall showed day 356 circled in red. My hands trembled until my nails dug crescents into my palm. Sleep was a distant, mocking idea. At 3 in the morning, the diner felt like the inside of a throat, narrow, raw, and quiet. Marco texted that his kid had a fever and he'd have to be at urgent care in the morning. He could only make noon. A rain surge tripped a breaker and the flat top went cool and mean in the dark. The vent rattled like something having a nightmare. I whispered, "I can't," to the empty dining room and the words stuck. Then Walter's voice, because it's that way with people you love, seemed to come from inside me. "Tap twice, try again." I climbed up on the step stool where I keep light bulbs and tapped the breaker twice, palms slick with lemon oil and cold. The grill coughed back to life with a ragged, grateful hiss. I brewed a fresh pot and the heat steadied my hands. I cleaned the counter slowly in small, concentric circles until the lemon oil left a mirror clear enough that my reflection looked like someone I could trust. I texted Dana, "We're still on." Her reply was a single thumbs up and a coffee cup, simple, like a hand squeezed in the dark. I sat on a stool, coffee in both hands, and watched the rain hit the window. At 3:47 a.m., with the neon stubbornly dark but the kitchen alive, I chose to go on. Even if it was just me, a microphone, and a few folding chairs, I decided we would meet morning with proof and with truth. Gus showed up at 4:10 with his truck smelling like oil and old coffee, a generator in the bed, and a burlap sack of sandbags by his knee. He dumped it all in the alley like a promise. "We'll make our own power," he said, grinning with the kind of grin that means he's already fixed the problem in his head. Lyle texted 10 minutes later, "Here." He pulled his van up and climbed the ladder in the wind, fingers sure as if the neon sign were a part of him. For a long minute I watched him work, the rain hissing around his shoulders, and when he flipped the transformer the neon coughed and then burned steady, a streak of red that felt like the diner taking a breath. Ruby lit up the neighborhood chat with 100 small electric plans, and the jazz trio texted they'd borrow battery amps from a music teacher's van. Mrs. Patel posted in the local group like a town crier. "Bring chairs, bring your voice, bring your raincoat." Replies poured in, "Got 10 chairs, I'll bring pie, we'll help clean up." I printed extra copies of my speech and made the font big enough that rain couldn't wash the words away. Tess came early, lugging 2 cameras and a tripod, and stayed quiet while she set up. The neighborhood felt suddenly alive in a way that steadied something in my chest. Help was a setting now, not a wish. I taped the Walters apron napkins in their little bundles by the register and set out stacks of the 2-page summaries Dana had made, clean, plain, and readable even if someone was distracted by kids or drizzle. I tested the mic and heard my breath coming back like an engine warming. My hands steadied enough to fold napkins and stack chairs. For the first time in a long while, the chaos felt like it had a shape I could stand in. Dawn came the way Portland gives it, soft and determined, a gray that held light instead of biting cold. Lyle's neon hummed above the street, red against the mist, and the diner looked like a little boat with its lamp on. I wiped the counter until the lemon oil left a mirror clean enough to see my face, and I didn't look away. Ruby chalked Walter's promise in big, cheerful letters on the sidewalk slab. The high school trio tuned up under an awning, the keyboard making patient, hopeful noises, the sax breathing quick and bright. Neighbors carried folding chairs in like they were bringing their own pews. Sylvia Reed arrived under a small black umbrella, businesslike and quiet. Dana sat next to her with copies stacked neat and a pen she never twirled. Colin came late, of course, flanked by Grant Ellison and Liam Porter, slick coats and shoes that didn't want to meet puddles. They stepped into the crowd like men who expected to own the room. I felt the old electricity of anger prick the back of my neck, and I let it pass like a storm front. I tested the mic pop, and the crowd hushed before I even spoke. Marco was at the griddle like a magician with a stack of plates, flipping pancakes with a rhythm that made the whole block smell like breakfast. I counted to 3 to myself the way Walter taught me to steady the hands before a big order, and then I started. "My name is Zoe," I said, and my voice reached the rain and the people. I promised Walter I'd keep the door swinging and the coffee hot. I said the conditions simply: stay open and in the black for 12 months, finish the renovation list, and host Founders Day. I pointed at the cream-painted walls, the stitched throws on the booths, the working safety lights, the neon burning patient above us. I showed the crowd our ledger totals in plain language: sales steady, expenses met, repairs logged. I told them the deadlines we'd hit and the receipts we'd saved. No big words, no lawyer talk, just the things you could see and touch. Then I clicked play. The projector hummed and the alley footage filled the side of the building. There he was, Liam Porter, a hood up, glancing both ways, setting the little bag by the back door, taking a photograph like he was proud of his detective work, then scattering pellets as if he'd found evidence. The timestamp showed the date and the time. I held up the plastic box with the bag inside for everyone to see. The rain made the projector colors wash a little, but the picture was clear. I read the pet store sticker aloud and pointed to the pellet package crumpled in the bag. I read Walter's ledger note about the unpaid loan and the messages promising money if the diner sold. The crowd shifted like a single body, feeling the truth settle into it. Someone said, "I knew it." Chairs creaked as people leaned forward. I kept my voice steady. We kept receipts. We kept our word. Colin lunged for the mic like a man who had practiced anger in a mirror. "This is a smear," he snapped, trying to sound like a judge instead of a man wearing someone else's ambitions. The push of his voice ricocheted off the cream walls like a bad echo. Dana was already on her feet. She stepped between us with copies of the timeline and said, calm and clear, "We have copies for anyone who wants to read." She handed stacks to the front row, plain pages with dates and photos and notes anyone could follow. Mrs. Patel moved forward and, with the steady patience of someone who's sorted numbers all her life, explained the timeline: how the troll posts matched times, how deliveries canceled, how the fake permit showed up. "Look at the times," she said. "It's all here." Gus, who'd been standing behind the folding table like a quiet sentinel, called out Grant Ellison's name as he pointed to a still of a dark SUV in the alley. Grant's face went colorless and he edged to the side, then left, quick and small. Liam tried to hightail it across the wet pavement and slipped on the concrete. A neighbor who's worked in the local patrol stood up and noted his name, offering a napkin for the scraped knee. People who had been filming slowed their phones, then stopped. A few of Colin's colleagues in the back lowered their eyes and put their phones away. The crowd shifted from noise to attention. I turned the mic back toward them and said the thing I felt like shouting at the world for months: "We don't have to shout, we just have to see." Sylvia stepped forward then, her umbrella like a small businesswoman's shield against the drizzle. The rain made dots on her notes but not on her voice. She read slowly, plainly, like someone telling a story you didn't expect. She said the diner had been open and in the black for the required 12 months. She said the renovation items on Walter's list had been completed: the paint, the neon, the freezer replacement, the safety lights. She acknowledged the evidence of outside interference and the timeline that showed it. Her verdict was simple and clear in language anyone could understand. Walter's conditions were met. She said the words I had been holding my breath for and felt the floor shift under me in a good way. The money would go to me to keep the diner running and to create the scholarships Walter wanted. It wasn't a courtroom and she wasn't a judge in a movie. She was a woman with a duty, and she had looked at what we'd done and decided to trust us to protect the place. For a second, the world narrowed down to the sound of my own breathing and the hum of the neon above. Dana handed Colin a stack of papers, copies of a complaint she'd filed about interference and misrepresentation. He stood there with all his reasons suddenly folded into paper. He looked like a man who'd lost a suit he was wearing to prove he belonged. The crowd clapped then, not the loud roar of victory, but the steady, relieved clap of people who had watched a small thing fight to stay alive in a storm. It felt like church. I walked to the little peg by the register where I kept aprons and hung a clean dishwasher's apron on the hook. I didn't make a speech about mercy, I just wanted to put the truth where everyone could see it. Marco slid a pancake across the counter to me as if he'd always known what breakfast could save. Ruby laughed and cried at once and hugged me so tight I felt like a cat trying to purr in a thunderstorm. The neon hummed above our heads like a heartbeat we'd managed to keep. I looked at Sylvia, at Dana, at Mrs. Patel, at Gus, at Marco, at Ruby, at the crowd that had filled our little lot with folding chairs and stories and pies. I looked at Colin, small and quiet on the edge, and I thought of all the nights and receipts and pains it had taken to get here. Then I said the simplest thing I knew to say: the door stays open. The words landed like a promise. People smiled in that slow, weary way you do after hard work pays off, no glitter, just the honest relief of a job done. The pancake tasted like victory and fried edges and the stubborn, soft center of things you refuse to let go of. The rain kept falling, but the neon burned steady, and I felt a hand on the counter. My hand, solid and real for the first time in a long time. The weeks after Founders Day felt like waking up from a long, noisy dream into something steady. We turned the scholarship jar into an actual account, the Walter Bennett Fund, and Mrs. Patel drew up a simple board of neighbors to keep an eye on it. We promised one scholarship that first year and posted the rules on the wall. Local kid, need and good grades, community service. Sylvia sent the first transfer for repairs and for the scholarship, and we taped a note on the wall so anyone could see how the money was used. A new commercial freezer arrived with a soft, promising hum. Gus stood next to it grinning like it was Christmas morning, and I felt a ridiculous lift in my chest. I made a dent in a student loan payment for the first time in months and gave Ruby a raise. She marched down the street the next day wearing new work shoes and a grin so wide it made me cry. We repainted the trim one quiet Tuesday, cream and red meeting cleanly at the edges, and for the first time the diner looked like the postcard Walter always imagined. Mom and Dad didn't come in. Mom texted me 3 recipes Walter loved, and I texted back a thank you and left space for her. Dad sent a short message, an old joke Walter would have told, and that was enough for now. The neon switched on at dusk and stayed steady, humming like a satisfied dog. I set our first scholarship goal: one local kid, one small step. The counter smelled like lemon oil when I polished it, and in that smell I felt like we were home. Life outside the diner shifted too. Tess posted a piece, "How a Diner Fought Back." That wasn't slick, but it was honest. People read it and came back. Our customers steadied into a healthier rhythm, and the tip jar began to breathe again. Colin's name disappeared from his law firm's website. A terse note said he was on leave, and people stopped asking where he was. Liam got charged for trespassing after the alley footage went to the right people. He sent an awkward apology to Dana that I forwarded on without comment. Grant Ellison's condo proposal quietly vanished from the neighborhood forum, and almost like a small victory, a bakery announced it had leased the storefront next to us. Marco's life found balance again. He enrolled in a night culinary class and we celebrated with a staff pie. Gus replaced the heavy door closer and now the door shut soft, like a final word spoken kindly instead of slammed. Mrs. Patel brought me a steaming cup of tea one afternoon and with a sparkle she'd never lost said, "Your grandfather would be noisy proud." The neighborhood felt like it was knitting itself back together. It wasn't all clean, careers get messy, apologies come late, but the hum of a safe place was forming again and I could hear it under the coffee grinder. Then, one rainy Tuesday, Colin walked in. He looked smaller than the man who used to hover in his suit outside our window. No tie, no umbrella, his hair looked like he'd run his hands through it too many times. He hesitated at the door like he wasn't sure if he knew how to cross the threshold. He asked, in a voice that sounded like it had been swallowed and softened, "Is there any work?" I looked at him for a long breath. I thought about all the receipts, the nights I'd slept in the office, the way he'd mocked my apron and the place I'd loved. I thought about Walter's note in the ledger, "Keep breakfast where people can afford it." I pointed to the hook by the sink where a clean dishwasher's apron hung, the same one I'd hung on Founder's Day. 12 an hour, I said. Nights and weekends, you clock in, you clock out, you bus tables first. If you're late, you're out. He swallowed and nodded like someone taking medicine. He reached for the apron with hands that trembled and I watched him tie it on like a man putting on a uniform he'd never worn before. Ruby didn't look up from the dish sink. Marco slid a plate across the counter and the flat top hissed as if to say welcome back to honest work. It wasn't mercy, it was a lesson served at the counter. The neon hummed over us, steady as a heartbeat, and lemon oil rode the air. I slid a plate toward Colin and said, simply, "Order up, Colin, welcome to honest work." If this story moved you, tell me your own turning point in the comments. What did you fight for? Subscribe for more first-person stories like this and hit the bell so you don't miss next week's true feeling tale.